You're watching the DSP Leaders Summit on the Cloud Native Telco. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV. Today's panel discussion is on building on the NFV investment with Cloud Native. We want to find out how telcos can leverage their existing NFV efforts as they embrace new Cloud Native practices and start network deployment, or indeed if they should. Perhaps it's better to focus on Greenfield solutions and new projects. So let's find out what our guests think. And I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Misbah Mahmoodi, who is Senior Director Product Marketing with VMware. Fahim Sabir, who is Director of Architecture and Development Network on Demand at Colt. Bruno, who is Senior Standardization Manager at Orange and the new Chairman of the ETSI NFV ISG. And Ian Turkington, Vice President of Architecture and APIs at the TM Forum. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the program today.
Hi. Thank you.
First of all, I'm going to ask, is there a clear evolution path from NFV technologies towards cloud native methodologies and practices? Is there common ground between the two? Bruno, as NFV chairman, why don't you start us off?
Yes, common ground for sure. Cloud native is a design approach and that is of direct applicability to NFV. This is clearly something that will help NFV to deliver on the promises. It should not be seen as the next technology after NFV. It's really something that a way to implement NFV that will enable NFV to deliver on the promises. There are roughly three aspects: a transformation of how VNFs are being designed. Another aspect is an evolution of the NFV infrastructure and the associated orchestration systems to natively support containers as in addition or as an alternative to virtual machines. And the third aspect, which is not directly, not only a technical aspect, the third aspect is the evolution of a process for developing a VNF, testing a VNF, shipping the VNF to the network operator, creating a kind of multiplayer CI/CD pipeline, so to say. But none of these transformations really call into questions the concept of NFV as such. So yes, very a common ground for sure.
Fahim, what about this evolution? Do you see this as an evolution from NFV to cloud native, or is it's a continuation of the same underlying principles? Is there common ground between the two? What's your take?
So, I'd agree with Bruno to a large degree. Cloud native is effectively two things. It's how you build and how you deploy, as in what the application structure is. And also there are processes and practices. And I believe that there is a lot of cloud native process and practice that's already happening. And that's a natural evolution. The idea that, you have CI/CD pipelines, you're able to automate testing, automate deployment. That's kind of a basic of NFV. It's not something which is specific to any specific technology. The other aspect of this is in terms of containerization, decomposing services into smaller components, implementing them using the container orchestration environment. I think that there is a little bit further to go in that area, but there certainly are investments that have been made up until now that can be leveraged in order to make progress there.
Great. Misbah, I'll turn to you now. Do you see this as being evolutionary or not?
There is a common ground, and I think what we need to, first of all, if we take a step back and look at what were some of the primary drivers of virtualization and we look at cost efficiencies. We looked at developing an agile network where we are able to increase the speed to market. We're looking at adopting new processes for being able to spin up, spin down different services to react more efficiently and more quickly to customer demand. And so if you think about where NFV was back then, it was to address a lot of those issues, those principles apply for cloud native even more so now because of the competition that the telcos are facing today across all the different areas, including some of the hyperscalers. And so if you think about it from that perspective, there is an evolution in the mindset. Now, whether NFV was done the right way, as you moved from physical infrastructure, and basically you took that and put that on top of virtual infrastructures, and all it was essentially running your existing infrastructure on COTS-based hardware. That may not have been the most efficient way to do that, right? And so now with cloud native principles, you do have the ability to look at how do we actually distribute and have a microservices architecture? How do we actually, as Bruno mentioned, develop and build out a CI/CD pipeline where we have that ability to do things around continuous integration, continuous deployment, and be able to have the ability to quickly scale up, instantiate new services as required. I think cloud native principles will get us to that point. But it is, like, as I mentioned, it is an evolution that telcos are kind of in that journey towards achieving what their end goals are going to be.
Great. And Ian, I'm really interested in your take here between the relationship between NFV and cloud native, providing, of course, we get our definitions right to start with.
Yes, going forth in the panel here, you always find out everybody else has answered the question already. And I think what Fahim and Bruno have already said, I would certainly agree with. I do not think it's necessarily an evolution from NFV to cloud native. But what I would say is that there's a lot of learning that can be taken from cloud native IT and can be applied in the NFV world. When cloud native is done correctly, you get flexibility, you get reduced time, you get reduced cost, you get improved accuracy. These are all good things, and if we apply the cloud native techniques, and particularly the cloud native development techniques, and the loose coupling and the concepts of microservices into the NFV world, I think there definitely is an opportunity to get the benefits of cloud native computing and exploit those benefits in NFV. Thanks.
This discussion is about building on the initial investment, substantial investment that telcos have made. Fahim, does cloud native and the adoption of cloud native, the further adoption of cloud native, does it bring about any change in regards to network strategies and investment models? Is there a fundamental change, or is it basically a continuation of what we've already invested so much in?
So largely not. One of the things about moving to cloud native technologies are that they are more efficient on infrastructure. So the money spent on buying compute stacks can be more efficiently used. You should be able to fit more cloud native functions onto the same piece of hardware than you can in terms of traditional sort of virtualized functions. But one of the key things that is different from a network strategy point of view is the way that functions are built needs to be very different in the cloud native environment rather than in the virtualization environment where functions can largely be lifted and shifted into a virtualized function.
Great. Ian, do you want to come in on what Fahim was just saying there?
Yeah, interestingly, your question is, does it is there a change of direction? And you were saying, no, I read that question and I came back with the opposite answer. I think, yes, we do need a change of direction regarding network investment and strategies. I think what NFV has done is it has, obviously introduced elasticity. It's in some cases lowered the price point, reduced barriers to entry. But fundamentally, what NFV has done is it has allowed us to deliver network functions in a different way. I think if we bring in cloud native techniques, we actually have to rethink how we define our strategy and actually be prepared to adopt some of the cloud native techniques such as agile, being prepared to deliver minimum viable products, being prepared to change your strategy as you go along. And I think there is also a possibility that the NFV components that we actually develop using the cloud native techniques will be different NFV components, certainly in terms of granularity. I think we should be looking towards smaller components rather than simply replacing physical network elements with virtual network elements. So I do expect that as if the transformation to cloud native is more complete and it actually becomes more of a cultural transformation, it actually does change your strategy and how you do things.
Great. And Misbah, this leads us nicely onto our next point, which is, do we have to abandon or phase out any of the NFV related work we've been doing as we move forward, or can we repurpose and continue with the work that we've already done?
So it's a good question, right? And I'm sure a lot of the telcos are asking this themselves. And, from a strategic partner of VMware, we're having these discussions with the telcos in terms of what their overall strategy is. Now, from what we're hearing, and telcos have invested in network functions virtualization. They have many deployments on NFV. We have many large scale operators who have, well over 45, 50% of their traffic running on virtualized infrastructure. They have their core voice data services running. So they do have a lot of investment on their NFV infrastructure, right? And so for them to be able to completely, leave that alone or completely, remove that and start to build from scratch, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they will continue to leverage their investments, quote unquote, sweat the assets, and make sure that they can recoup that investment. Now, this leads to my next point, which is, okay, so what are some of the new areas where cloud native architectures will actually play a critical role in, and where they should be investing in? And those are areas in terms of, whether it's the 5G standalone, edge infrastructure, mobile computing, private 5G, private LTE type services. I think that's where you'll start to see more of the telcos start to invest and build out from a cloud native perspective, take advantage of those efficiencies, but at the same time, continue at least for the short term, continue with their investments on the NFV infrastructure.
Bruno, you've been involved in the ISG for a good number of years. Is this something you see from the ISG members and the community that are supporting the development of the NFV specifications, that it's a continuation? They want to take best practices, apply, and just keep that onward going evolution of NFV?
Yes, indeed. Many aspects of these cloud native principles are actually applicable to the conventional NFV, I would say. By conventional, I mean even to VNFs that are running in virtual machines. So the evolution of the standards is such that we, of course, we are not only trying, but we are incorporating optimal support for container-based deployments, but we are also looking at enabling increased automation and agility in an NFV system, regardless of whether the VNFs are container-based or VM-based. And so, yes, to me, this is a smooth evolution.
Thanks very much. Fahim, I'd like to move on to where we're going to build out cloud native and where the activities are in our networks. And Misbah mentioned earlier about some of the areas where we're going to see this. Are there any easy wins? Are there any best practice, first choice deployments where we can see rapid results?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are. So, I mean, one of the things that Misbah mentioned was edge, and I believe that's where we're going to see cloud native type approaches in terms of infrastructure deployments happen first. The devices on the edge are considerably lower powered than the devices that we see in the core, and therefore, they suit the cloud native deployment model a lot better, because you need applications or functions that are quite efficient from a resource utilization point of view. But not just that, but I mean, Edge is relatively new, and there are very few providers out there that currently actually even have any sort of semblance of an Edge deployment. So that seems like the most obvious place to actually start the deployment of cloud native services.
Great. And Ian, are there any areas, is Edge the place to start? And, and also, should we be focused on maybe specific project-based deployments first?
I find this question very hard to answer. It really had me stumped. I thought, are there any easy quick wins area? And unfortunately, we're going to give you a bit of a political answer. I think the answer is it depends. And I think in a particular operator, they need to look at what they have already invested in NFV. And if they've already got the benefits of that, they have to sweat those assets. I think another really important thing to look at is the culture within their organization. I think moving to cloud native is a cultural shift. And I think it's, in some cases, it's going to be a particularly difficult cultural shift for a network technology organization. I think for a software technology organization, they're probably on that journey already. But you have to make sure your culture can embrace the changes to cloud native thinking in terms of development and testing and agile approaches. And then the third area is really, what does the business want to achieve? I think in things like the development of IoT, I think in things like the development of edge compute, yes, there certainly are opportunities there, but it will really depend on, does that operator, are they moving into that area? And if they are moving into that area and they have the capacity to change their culture, yeah, there certainly are benefits they can reap there.
Great. And Misbah, any advice for telcos looking at cloud native deployments, building out from their NFV work? Should they be looking at new projects and solutions? Should they be looking at existing projects to try and evolve existing projects?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, they already have their investments, so recoup their spend on those investments, but then also think about where they can find new areas of monetization. And as I mentioned, edge computing, being able to provide services closer to the enterprise customer. If you look at providing a higher throughput, ultra low latency service, but not only that, but also then being able to have a model where we can quickly scale up, scale down, instantiate new services closer to the edge. That's really where I think cloud native principles apply, and really operators and telcos can really take advantage of those cloud native principles. So if you think about where they're looking to go, I think the easy wins are definitely at the edge, and then also now we're starting to move out to the radio access, and that seems to be another area where we're starting to see the disaggregation of the RAN, and potentially some real benefits of applying cloud native in in the RAN. And for operators, that could be a great way to significantly reduce their capex and opex for RAN.
Great, thanks. Fahim, a lot of telcos based their NFV deployments around Openstack. Is this a model that we can adopt going forward as we start to use more cloud native methodologies and techniques, but perhaps using Kubernetes as like a central hub, a kind of central ecosystem?
So I've always had a problem with the use of Openstack in NFV deployments. To me, it's largely a marriage of convenience because it existed and saved a ton of work up front in actually developing out an environment to actually host VNFs on. I would, to a degree, we run Kubernetes within Colt, and we run a few of our network on demand applications on that environment. And it's not easy to manage a Kubernetes environment. The transition that many operational organizations within telcos have faced in the adoption of technologies like OpenStack has been quite painful. And one thing that I would do is I actually caution against the idea of just saying the answer is Kubernetes without really thinking about what the question actually is. And one thing that I would like to see going forward is actually some thought put into the idea that, this is a telco environment and it should be thought about how it solves telco problems, not a case of picking up an environment that was designed for solving compute application problems. And that is something that I think was a somewhat mistake around the first NFV deployments, and something that we should learn from and seek to avoid going forward.
Well, it's bold. Anybody want to pick up on Fahim's comments there? Oh, Bruno, please.
Yes, just a very short comment on that. I believe that indeed, although most of the work is currently done with Kubernetes in mind, I believe it is important to make sure that the standards we develop will be able to will still be relevant if it turns out that an alternative to Kubernetes appears in the industry. And that's not so easy because there is, for the time being, most people are Kubernetes minded, I would say.
Well, certainly these days, if you talk cloud native, you immediately think of words like containers, Kubernetes to orchestrate them. It's one follows the other. We are going off our script somewhat here, but do we think this is a bit of an issue? There's too much focus on assuming that the answer to life, the universe, and everything is Kubernetes. Ian or Misbah, do either one of you two want to comment on that?
I'm inclined to think the answer is Kubernetes at the minute, but at the same time, I also hear people talk about the difficulties with it, and I also think there is a lot of truth in what was said, in that the problems faced in network design and network architecture are different problems than in computing. So we are applying a software solution to a network problem. I think it is working, but I think there are difficulties there as well, and it will be interesting to see how that develops. I certainly wouldn't go as far as saying, no, you just throw Kubernetes out, something else should be replacing it. I think it is the right tool at this point in time. But I think as we move cloud native and networking and NFV closer together, we might see other tools developing or the existing tool set extending.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree there in the sense of, at this time, Kubernetes is the, I wouldn't say de facto, but it is becoming the leading choice for orchestrating and managing container-based environments and so forth. And I think, from a VMware perspective, one of the key areas that, one of the key principles that we are trying to give to our telco customers is the fact that they can have a platform that allows them to run, manage, build both VM-based workloads as well as container-based workloads. And to what Fahim was mentioning, it is complex, and we understand that it's very complex. But what we have done from an architecture perspective and from a tooling perspective is really given the ability to manage both your VMs and your container-based workloads in a way that is very easy and efficient, and be able to instantiate new services, be able to upgrade services, be able to auto-heal, and really providing a lot of the automation capabilities. So yes, it is difficult, but I think this is the time for telcos to rely on their partners, on their vendors, to be able to provide a solution where we are trying to give them the best in breed and the easiest path to get to where they want to be, which is a fully cloud native architecture.
Well, a final question, a quick question and a quick summary from all four of you, then looping back to the subject of this discussion. Fahim, I'll start with you. Can and should telcos leverage their NFV investments as they move towards a more cloud native mindset? So,
going back to the earlier points, the cloud native practices and processes in terms of how services are developed and how they're deployed, how they're tested, is something which is a natural evolution anyway. And we're seeing that already happen in the as transition happens to traditional NFV, I think Bruno called it, and that's a natural evolution, and it will continue to happen, and that's an investment that telcos should be making in order to become competitive within this market, and that is completely separated away from how you actually realize functions within your architecture. In terms of moving towards cloud native, it's not necessarily a natural evolution, but I would say that it's one that's going to happen at some point. What we need to do as telcos is focus on use cases which are difficult to solve with the traditional NFV model, and use that as a test bed in order to actually understand how we work in this environment, and then move that back into the core, so to speak.
Great. Ian, can telcos and should telcos leverage their existing NFV investment?
Short answer is yes, I think they should. I think there is big opportunity to be taken from exploiting cloud native techniques, certainly in terms of more of the techniques related to development, but certainly then the techniques in terms of deployment. I think it definitely isn't the case of throw away your NFV and start again. You have to continue to exploit what you've got and build upon that. But I do think going forward, I would certainly be saying to telcos they should be looking to extend their cloud native way of working into the NFV space.
Great. And Bruno, can telcos leverage this NFV investment? Because cloud native is, as we've said, it's more than just technologies, it's methodologies, it's a way of thinking, it's a culture.
Yeah, I guess that telcos and VNF providers as well actually must or should, I don't know how strong I should be, but they clearly all the industry should leverage what has been deployed and learned so far, because the traditional NFV has also been a great opportunity to learn a lot of things on network transformation. So, the whole industry should leverage what has been done so far and take the benefits from cloud native design and operations.
Great. And Misbah, can telcos and their vendor partners leverage and build on the time and effort they put into NFV?
Yes, absolutely. Meaning I wouldn't say it's a clear-cut answer, but definitely the telcos have invested. They have invested in CapEx. They have invested in OpEx. They have invested in people and processes. So they just can't get rid of that. They need to continue to build upon it. But one of the points that Fahim mentioned, I think, is really good, and I agree with him completely on this one, which is, let's look at what are some of those hard areas to solve that NFV may not have been able to do. And there are certain cases where telcos may think that moving towards cloud native will help them address many of those challenges. And I mentioned, edge computing could be one of those key easy wins, but it's also a very tough challenge to develop with NFV right now. So they do need to move that over to being able to have it more cloud native based. So it's basically, keep your investments. It is going to go on for the next foreseeable future. Start to build on cloud native principles in areas where you need to address those first. And then it's an evolution. It's going to happen over the course of 5 to 10 years, just like NFV took 5 to 10 years to get to where we are today. I think in 5 to 10 years we'll probably be having the same discussion, which is what's the next big thing, and is it going to be replacing cloud native architectures? So it's it's something that telcos continuously adapt, and they try to improve on key areas to help them improve their efficiencies, help them improve time to market, but also then improve their processes in the whole scheme of things.
You're absolutely right. We're always looking for the next big thing in this industry. But for now, all of you, thank you very much indeed. That's all the time we have for this panel. A reminder that we've got many more interviews and panel discussions and analysis programs as part of the Cloud Native Telco Summit, and they're all here to view on the TelecomTV website. If you are watching us live, then please stay with us and join our live Q&A program. And any questions you have for any of our guests, do get in touch with us via the TelecomTV website. But for now, thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again very soon.